Ladies and gentlemen, please notice that exits are conveniently located at the front and rear of this auditorium. When leaving the theater, we suggest that the exit at the front of the auditorium will allow you easier access to the parking areas. Thank you.
I got a 6-year-old in my calculus class in college and it's going to take my job.
What is this nonsense? Comic Sans? Butler had never seen this film, and I got the indication that he hated it.
She's like, "You pussy, get back in the game."
He rebels against maturity by taking a job at a movie theater. Oh, no, I'm sorry, that's me. At a video store.
Well, this is now owned by Disney, so you're going to see a remake at some point. Hi, I'm Mike Butler.
And I'm Mike Field.
And you're listening to the Forgotten Cinema Podcast. Each episode, we highlight a film that, for a variety of reasons, was forgotten by audiences. Whether it be because a more popular movie was released at the same time, or the film simply didn't catch on with an audience in its initial run. We'll discuss what we love about the movie, or maybe don't love about it, but we'll always recommend you revisit it. If you enjoy our podcast, we want to hear from you. We're on Instagram and Facebook. Find us. Our podcast is available on all platforms with a backlog of over 175 episodes for your listening pleasure.
What's going on? Did you forget the movie we're doing?
No, I just couldn't come up with the little stupid cheesy beginning thing like I usually do fast enough.
I'm just getting into New York City from Vermont. And
just got robbed in New York City. Met a guy that looks like the Godfather. Totally not the Godfather.
There you go. That's right. We are back. I don't know where we didn't go anywhere, but we are back, and we're doing the movie The Freshman from, I think, 1990, right? Yes, 1990, The Freshman, a summer film, Butler. Well, we'll get to that as I get to the synopsis right now. Really great start here today for the show. Clark Kellogg, not the gentleman that does the NCAA sports for March Madness, is robbed moments after arriving in New York. So when he sees his mugger several days later, he confronts him. The man promises to return his property and get him a job with his uncle, Carmine Sabatini, who turns out to be a mafia boss. As Clark continues his shady work for Carmine, he discovers an elaborate underworld that has caught the attention of the authorities. As things come to a head, not everything is what it seems. I'm going to say it, brother. That's not bad.
It's all right. It's all right.
Just an all right? Why? What do you want?
It makes it a little bit more suspicious. Plus, he doesn't get any of his property back. His property's all gone. Doesn't get his property back and seems Sabatini.
Well, he gets the money for his
job. Because he has to deliver that Komodo Dragon.
Yes, indeed. Or as it was actually in the movie, not a Komodo Dragon, but and I lost the note already.
A monitor lizard?
Yes, an Asian monitor lizard, which is a relative of the Komodo Dragon. So Asian water monitor. That's it. Asian water monitor.
It was clearly a water monitor or like a monitor lizard. I was like, that's not a Komodo Dragon. It'd be 3 times bigger, and also it would eat them. Even its saliva is poisonous. I wouldn't mind a Komodo Dragon in this movie. All right. Anyway, we're rambling and stuttering. So The Freshman has a runtime of 102 minutes. Rated PG, which surprised me. Production budget of $12 million. Release date was July 27th, 1990, a summer film. Opening weekend, it did $4.2 million. Domestic, 21.4, and worldwide is the same number. Either didn't come out internationally or didn't do enough. Production company is actually produced by Mike Lovell, and it was distributed by TriStar Pictures. Remember TriStar, everyone? Does everyone remember TriStar? Do you, Butler? Do you remember TriStar Pictures? I do. My first note is, oh man, that opening. You're right. Well, I remember sitting in the theater. Come on, you're like, all right, let's go. It's time for a movie. Yep. That's one of my favorite, like that and the 20th Century Fox drum roll. That's one of my favorite. I always like the old Paramount fanfare or whatever it's called. Well, the old Paramount one. I don't even think they do it now half the time. I think it's the image silent, but they used to have music that accompanied the stars going in. Oh, okay. So I don't know if I remember that. Yeah, I'd have to find it. All right. So on the 27th, it went up against Problem Child and Presumed Innocent. Presumed Innocent's an awesome film. You've seen that. Have you? No. I always tell my favorite story about Presumed Innocent, but I'm not going to because it reveals the ending, so I'm not going to do that here. So if you see me in person, I'll tell you. What's it about? Presumed Innocent is with Harrison Ford, and Bonnie Bedelia's his wife, and he's cheating on his wife. Yep. And then he's involved in the murder of his mistress or whatever.
His mistress dies, and he's on trial for it. Yep.
Yeah, I've seen it.
Awesome. It's a good film. I think it's a good film. The week after August 3rd, you had a wide release of Young Guns 2, DuckTales the movie, Treasure of the Lost Lamp. I'm sure that's a Butler favorite. Limited release of Mo Better Blues and Metropolitan. And then the week before, the 20th of July, you had Arachnophobia. I like that film quite a bit. And Navy SEALs. Do you remember Navy SEALs?
Yes.
Yeah. I always remember the scene where Charlie Sheen jumps out of the Jeep off the bridge. And I was like, I can't believe they did that. This film is written and directed by Andrew Bergman. Bergman has directed Honeymoon in Vegas, It Could Happen to You, and Striptease. He also wrote all those. He's also has a writing credit on Blazing Saddles, Fletch, and Soap Dish. Butler, you should see Confess Fletch. It's pretty good.
At first, like, for some reason, the title didn't I didn't put two and two together and go, oh, it's a Fletch movie. I just was like, Confess Fletch. That's a weird title. I didn't even two and two together. It's the Chevy Chase Fletch. Well, I guess it's based more on the novel I've been told. It is,
yeah. It's a bit, as I told everyone who was asking me, it's the Fletch is more like Chevy Chase improv. That's where the comedy is, but this is more scripted comedy, and John Hamm's charismatic enough to carry it. So I think it worked. So, I mean, I'll probably have a more affinity to the older Fletches because I grew up with them, but I'm not going to sit here and tell you that they're well crafted, plot driven devices.
I haven't seen them in a long time, but I remember really liking them. But part of that's because it's like old Chevy Chase, who used to be like funny and not grouchy. If we did an episode of Fletch, like for Forgotten Cinema, we would probably slam it. Like we'd probably have a lot of problems with the plot. We'd love it. Really? It'd be quotable, but we'd have a lot of problems with the plot. Yeah, it's been so long since I've seen it.
Yeah.
Well, he did two of them, right?
Fletch and Fletch Lives.
Chevy Chase. Yeah.
Cinematography was William A. Fraker, who was nominated for he was nominated for 6 Oscars.
Dang.
Looking for Mr. Goodbar, Heaven Can Wait. He actually was nominated for 2 Oscars in 1941, for the movie 1941, Nominated for War Games and Murphy's Romance. Composer was David Newman, who was nominated for an Oscar for Anastasia. He also did Critters, The Phantom, which was an episode we did, and the first 2 Bill and Ted movies. Edited by Barry. What's that? Oh, yes, indeed. Edited by Barry Malkin, who was nominated for 2 Oscars, one for The Cotton Club and the other for The Godfather Part 3. And he also did Big. And then obviously I said it before, produced by Mike Lovell, who's done White Fang, Chances Are, and The Little Big League. This film has Matthew Broderick as Clark Kellogg. He's from Glory, which is an episode we did, Butler. Tower Heist, Election, and of course, Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Marlon Brando as Carmine Sabatini, who's basically playing Don Corleone here.
Yep.
He was nominated for 8 Oscars, Butler. 8.
Ridiculous.
He's won 2. You probably know the one. Do you know what movies he won for? He's won
On the Waterfront.
Times. On the Waterfront, yep.
And then, The Godfather.
Yes, I was going to say, it's pretty obvious.
Yeah.
He also was nominated for A Streetcar Named Desire, Viva Zapata, Julius Caesar, Sayonara, Last Tango in Paris, and A Dry White Season. Penelope Ann Miller as Tina Sabatini. She, of course, is in Adventures of Babysitting, as everyone should know this already. She's also in Carlito's Way, the movie Reagan, I believe, which is new. It's coming out. And she is in the TV show Dahmer, which will be out, I believe, either late this year or early next year.
Is that the one about his mother?
She plays Dahmer's mom, yes, but it's about Jeffrey Dahmer.
Okay, I've seen the advertisements for that. I think it'll be out by the time this comes out.
Oh, good. Then sooner than later. Reagan, she plays Nancy Reagan, I believe.
Okay.
So Bruno Kirby as Victor Ray. He's in He's in City Slickers, When Harry Met Sally, and Good Morning Vietnam. Frank Whaley as Steve Bushak, who is Clark's roommate in NYU. He's in Field of Dreams, Pulp Fiction, Swimming with Sharks, and Hustlers. John Polito plays Chuck Greenwald. I only have him in here because the last movie we did had him in as well. Mm-hmm. No, I'm sorry, not the last movie.
The next movie we're going to do.
Next week's movie has him in it too. So I was like, wow, he's in 2. He is in Miller's Crossing, The Crow, and Flags of Our Fathers. Paul Benedict as Arthur Fleeber. Did you recognize him from The Jeffersons? Like his voice, and he's the...
Oh yeah. He's in a ton of stuff, yeah.
He is. He's a big-time character actor. He's all over the place. He's also in The Man with Two Brains and The Addams Family. And then My note here is that the Jurassic World universe exists here because BD Wong is in this as Edward. And I was like,
this is where it begins. He begins with the animals.
Yes. He is obviously, of course, in Jurassic Park, and he's in only the first Jurassic Park, right? And then he comes back in Jurassic World.
The first one, and then Jurassic World.
Yeah. And for those who watch Law and Order, he was on Law and Order for quite some time. He played I don't think he was a lawyer, but he was kind of like a psychologist or something. So I think he was on SVU a lot. I don't know if I had that. I don't know if I'm right there. All right. So you had never seen this film, correct?
When we first talked about it, I was like, I don't know this film. And then when I saw the poster, I was like, wait, no, I know this film. It used to always be on Comedy Central, and I watched a couple scenes, but I was never really interested in enough to watch most of it. So I've seen bits and pieces, but I never watched the whole thing.
Did it interest you enough now?
No.
Oh, really?
To be honest, I laughed maybe a handful of times. I didn't think, I wasn't impressed by the movie, to be honest.
Okay. Well,
there were a couple of things that I liked, but my main thing is I don't think Matthew Broderick can act.
Oh, stop.
That's what I've decided. I was like, he's so one note. He's not entirely interesting. He's kind of like a boring Ferris Bueller thrown into a situation. I think he's a great actor for other actors to bounce off of, but I wasn't particularly impressed. I like some of the stuff. Like I like Marlon Brando. Like I like that they identify him as looking just like Don Corleone without ever actually saying it.
Let's go back to Broderick, though. We'll get to that. Let's go back to Broderick. Are you going to go retcon now your the Glory episode we did?
No, I think he's fine in Glory.
But I think said he's a terrible actor.
That works. I just don't think, I don't know. I'm so torn because watching this, I'm like, it's kind of the same character from Godzilla. It's kind of still Ferris Bueller. It's kind of the same character from every Matthew Broderick thing I've ever seen him in.
Well, then let me ask. Go ahead.
It's weird. I don't know. I think he just works in Glory well, and I think he works in Ferris Bueller well. I think he's just got to be put in a character that it works in, and he's got this bravado in this movie that isn't earned.
Towards the end, or just throughout.
Throughout, but at the same time, he's a big giant pussy. I don't know where he falls on the character spectrum. Maybe he didn't put in the work for this movie in terms of his character development. There's choices he makes, and there's lines that are delivered that I just don't feel like were like worked on for Broderick. It's like they were written for the script, and like Broderick say that it's like maybe he would have said it differently based on the way Broderick plays it. But at times he's so direct, but at times he's so afraid of everything. And it didn't match up for me.
Okay.
And I feel like because the movie centers around him, the movie then kind of fell apart, if that makes sense. And I also just didn't think there were enough funny lines. I don't think there was enough comedy within this supposed comedy movie.
Mm-hmm.
It was just kind of a comedy of errors, but maybe not enough errors as well.
Well, I think a lot of because I've seen it a couple of times, and I think a lot of the comedy comes from repeat viewing, because there's some things that people miss or some because they kind of gloss over, because there's a lot of, like with Bruno Kirby's always, because he's talking fast. There's a lot of things that maybe somebody might not catch in the first viewing. But I'm curious because I'm going to go back to Broderick. We always talk about, like Tom Cruise, we always talk about celebrities who are they're always the same person, but that's what celebrities are. Do you not, is it that you don't think Matthew Broderick his star is high enough to be considered in that realm in terms of it's Matthew Broderick playing different parts? Or do you think that you kind of, it sounds like you kind of wish he was more of a character actor and would lose himself in movies and roles, and maybe that's just not his thing. Like,
I don't know. This is the first time I ever like thought about it. Like, because I've always liked him. Like 1997 Godzilla. He's kind of great in that because he's supposed to be this dweebish, nerdy dweeb.
Mm-hmm.
Ferris Bueller. He works because he's just kind of a dweeb, but
Ferris Bueller is cooler than cool.
Apparently, I never thought he was super cool, but he was cool within his friends group.
Okay.
He thought he was cool enough that everything worked out for him.
Mm-hmm.
But then I'm like watching this and I'm like, hey, he's still Matthew Broderick. Nothing's changed. Nothing really changes throughout any of these characters. So I don't know. I've always, until this moment, until I just watched this movie, I was just like, I don't know. So like I said, I think maybe you have to write for Matthew Broderick, but other actors as well have a certain charisma about them.
Mm-hmm.
Denzel Washington's almost always Denzel Washington put into different roles, but he's got this charisma and this, he puts himself in the roles. Tom Cruise obviously puts himself in harm's way for the roles, but puts himself in the roles, with the exception of maybe a couple movies where he does, I think, disappear pretty well.
Well, I'm curious.
But I just don't think maybe he didn't disappear. This is also early 90s Broderick of like just off of Ferris Bueller, like putting him everything kind of a movie. So maybe he just didn't get the chance or the time, or maybe he just wasn't really into the movie and just was like, all right, this is a paycheck.
He's also not, I wouldn't say he's 100% a movie star. He's a theater actor. He's Broadway.
True as well.
So that's probably, I mean, I'm curious because you mentioned Godzilla and you're okay with Godzilla. And I'm going to venture a guess because you grew up with Godzilla and you didn't grow up with this film. This is a film before you were old enough to understand. That's another thing.
Well, I'm thinking, because I also grew up with Ferris Bueller, although I was never a huge Ferris Bueller guy.
Well,
I know
Ferris Bueller played everywhere on TV all the time, so I can understand that. This movie
is just pervasive. Yeah.
Yeah.
But The Freshman growing up, it was always on Comedy Central, and I never really got invested enough to watch any more than like 5 minutes and go, what else is on?
Mm-hmm. Well, The Freshman's biggest thing is the fact that Carmine Sabatini is Brando's playing the Godfather. I mean, that's kind of what brings people to the movie. And when they were going to do this film, Bergman talked about Brando couldn't really figure out how to play this role. And then Bergman had the idea of, why don't we just say that you're the inspiration for, Don Corleone, the writing of Don Corleone, The Godfather. And that's what hooked Brando. So that's, I think that's funny. I think that's ingenious. And I think
that works. Yeah. When Matthew Broderick's about to enter when he enters his little bar and he first sees them and he just like freaks out and almost collapses. Is that who I think? Oh, the resemblance is uncanny, right?
Yeah. And I wonder if they don't ever mention it because that's the joke, or they don't mention it because they can't mention it. Like, you know what I mean? I'm curious.
I would wonder if it began with, can we do this? And they didn't even bother. Like, do we have to? Would it be funnier if we don't even really mention it? Because I think it's funnier not fully mentioning it. I think that makes the joke work even more. So it's kind of like a, if you know kind of a thing.
Right.
But they had to have the rights because they show clips from part 1 and part 2.
Well, you get that with permission from Paramount. So yeah. Maybe they weren't. Yeah. So would you, because this movie was offered to Robert Downey Jr. and he turned it down. Would you have preferred? This is not Robert Downey Jr. now. This is Robert Downey Jr. back then, where he's troubled. So
but he's in. Is it War? Was it War Games he's in?
Who, Broderick?
No, Downey Jr. What's the one where he's like he's in college and he's like a kind of a douche. He's not the main character.
You're talking about Back to School.
Back to School.
Yeah.
So I could see, because he's got a little bit more of a bravado, even young Downey Jr., that I can see some of the lines that Broderick delivers where he's a little bit more like, no, I'm not doing this. I can see that being more, I would believe Downey Jr. a little bit more than I believe Broderick. But again, it's also how Broderick plays the scenes in between those moments as well.
It seems like you just don't like his style, Broderick's style of acting. That just doesn't do it for you.
In this movie, yeah. This is the first movie.
I don't think he's bad. I don't think he's a bad actor like you think he is. Or
like I said, this is the first time. Yeah, it's like the first time I've ever had that thought.
No, I don't think that. I think maybe you just don't like his style. Maybe there's just some people, sometimes some actors, you just don't like their choices. And I
think this is the first movie where his style didn't match with his character. And that might not be his fault, but it really didn't. I thought, at least, I'm not saying I'm Ray, obviously, but I didn't think that Broderick's style match up with his character.
Okay. Now you don't buy the romance angle in the movie. Tina Sabatini, Carmine's daughter, played by Penelope Ann Miller, She does. She pretends to fall in love, but she pretends like because that's the whole. It's not a con. It's just
turns out that was their whole plan all along. Yeah,
but they do end up kind of being romantically linked at the end a little bit.
Oh, sure. I buy that. It's a comedy movie. I'm all right with that because of how it turned out.
Okay,
but obviously it starts out super zany and like Matthew, get away from this girl, like run.
Oh,
but again, with him, like in some case, like I feel like in some cases his character would run, but then he's like, "You're grasping my arm so hard," and he's like, "Listen to me. First of all, you're not gonna grab the arm that hard and like yank what you think is an actual mobster's daughter." Like he is so cocky around somebody who could easily like garrote him in an alleyway. It just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense for me.
Well, you're talking about Carmine, not Vic. Are you talking about Vic?
I'm talking about Carmine. Yeah.
Yeah.
But then he's also cocky around, his daughter and just,
they never present I don't think they ever present the organization as being anything but just a couple of guys. Because remember when he goes to the house, the guy with the shotgun is hiding.
The guard who was ducking the whole time.
Right. So he never sees any of that. He's initially scared. Yeah. But I think that they always, and it's because we know it's a comedy. Maybe we're not afraid as well. There's no really serious threat to,
right.
So maybe we don't view a threat. So you did like Marlon Brando's performance as Carmine Sabatini. What did you think of that?
Oh, sure. It was fine. It was just Don Corleone again, but he got to have, I think, more fun with it.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. What's the better performance? Carmine Sabatini or Don Corleone?
Don Corleone.
Why?
It's less silly.
Maybe not better. How about this? Maybe not better. What's the more
memorable?
Yeah. How about that?
Don Corleone.
Okay.
He's got better lines. He's got better moments. He's got better lighting. He's got better gravitas. I mean, he's got better music behind him. It's just, you come to me on this, the day of my daughter's wedding. It's like, as soon as he appears in that movie, you're just like, damn.
I don't have an answer for this. I'm just asking.
And the orange peel scene. There's no orange peel scene. But yeah, I feel like he's a man at odds with what he is in The Godfather.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in this movie, he's more a man at peace with who he is. And I guess maybe that's a little bit, that more calmness, plus it's a comedy movie, is a little lighter. So I think it's a very similar performance, almost the same, but obviously The Godfather to me is more memorable. But to anybody who grew up with this movie probably thinks the freshman performance is more memorable.
No, I don't.
You don't think so?
You can't have this performance without the other
without
one.
The original, yeah.
Right. Do you think that we shouldn't hold this film to the flames, the plot to the flames, as if you will, because it's a comedy, or do you think that we should attack the plot?
The plot itself, I think the plot is fine. I don't know. I think the plot spends way too much time on the animals. That one instance he worked for him. Whereas I think that it could have gone with like he worked a couple of times and did a couple of jobs. When he only does the one job and it's like, wow, we're really going to focus on this Komodo Dragon, huh? That kind of like, I don't know if it bothered me, but I was like, all right. Like he couldn't do like one or two more delivery jobs. It's just like, I did one job. Oh man, you're like a son to me. And I get at the end, they reveal why the whole thing was about the Komodo Dragon, but it just became less about the relationship between the two of them.
That whole plot point is not fleshed out a lot too much. I mean, it is for the ending to see what happens and the two wildlife agents that were, tricked into, were basically turned over, were caught, but they want you to believe that they knew all along about Clark, I guess, from the get-go. They knew about his stepfather. They knew about the wildlife guys, but that doesn't really make sense because, like, were you searching him out when he was in Vermont, or you eyed him as soon as he got out of the train. Like that,
right? Yeah,
that whole stuff didn't make any sense. It's just kind of a way to just be like, we knew all the time, like how they could set up the two wildlife agents and get them.
Instead of some NYU state student from New York who's doing the same thing, who we could have known about from 5 states away, we got some random kid from those spies. We don't have any spies in Vermont.
And this also has the same issue where I can't remember the movie we talked about. I don't think it was Alienation, but a couple episodes ago where and actually, you know what? This is probably a problem that we throughout films is they briefly bring up subplots, but they don't follow through. The whole stepfather subplot with Clark, it's maybe given about 10 minutes of screen time. And at the end of the film, when the stepfather, when Clark basically tells him, you ratted me out. And the stepfather tries to explain it, and kind of Clark gets his backbone and says, just leave. That's actually a good moment. The problem is that it doesn't feel, it could be a better moment if it was set up better.
It's just kind of there. And it's like, it's a story that could have been fleshed out, but you don't really earn it because you just get it at the beginning.
Yeah.
The movie wasn't about that, but they try to shoehorn it in about fathers and a real father. But again, that's another thing is I thought it was going to be more about, especially based on the synopsis that I had read, at the top of like HBO Max for this was, it's about the relationship between Carmine and Broderick's character or Clark. And you don't really get a lot of that. It's very quick.
Yeah, they don't. That's another.
The father angle doesn't play as well as it could have. If you spent more time with that, the father angle really could have. Right.
And they could have definitely touched upon that, especially towards the end, because the end of the movie, he goes and helps him with the dragon. They're taking a walk. You get the sense that they're still going to remain together, but it didn't really fit the way when he was in the tent leaving. Yeah. He was like, that was, I'll see you later. I'll never, like, you thought like, I'll never see him again. And then I was like, oh wait, no, he will. But it's not like that moment should be a moment where the audience wants them to get back, wants them to be together. And it just came out of nowhere. And so that's another, like you're talking about the whole father subplot with him and Carmine is touched upon, but never really, there's no really big payoff, or there is a payoff, but it doesn't pay off for us because it's not given enough attention in the first and second act. And then the other part is the subplot with the professor, the NYU professor, which I know what they're trying to say there. And I love it because it's absolutely correct. You come to my class, you got to buy my book, whole thing. And he's completely douchey and completely full of himself. That's something that I fervently agree with, but it's not. But then once he finds out that Carmine Sabatini, he's working for him, he becomes mousy, and that's it. He's out of the picture. There's no reason for him in the movie anymore. And it doesn't. He's just there to be a generic. It just kind of peters out. Yeah,
like mean teacher.
And I thought that could have been. I thought that was interesting enough to I for some reason I had it in my mind that Fleabur shows up at the end, but he didn't. So then I was like, okay, I don't, because the wildlife fishing game people, they come in about 45 minutes into the movie, I think 30, 40 minutes.
Something like that.
So it's almost like, okay, now these are the guys that we need to, the obstacles that we need to get over, but we just met them. So like I said, I started off this conversation. Do we really stick it to the plot? Do we put the plot to the fire because it's a comedy or not?
I mean, as you're watching the movie and you think, oh, it's mobsters, I think that you're waiting for him to want to become a snitch. I think that's just something that even I was like, all right, so when are the cops going to come and say, you got to rat this guy out? There's going to be something where, obviously watching, I expected him to be like, he's a mobster. I'll help you inform on him. And then it turns out he was never a mobster. And like, oh, I made a mistake. I assumed the worst of you or whatever. So I think you're waiting for some kind of police presence.
Right.
But again, like you said, I think that they set up school as something that's an obstacle, but then it's not really an obstacle.
I mean, that's a funny moment too, when Tina comes in and says, my father thinks that Clark is an A+ student. Oh, he's certainly good. A+.
A+.
I thought that was great.
The tin can tuna. It's the tin can. Do you think I could have a meeting with him?
Jimmy the Toucan?
I think it's highly unlikely. But it's like he didn't believe him when the FBI or the Federal Bureau, the wildlife game guys came in. Like he told you who he was meeting with.
Right. This is actually, I don't want to say it's based on a true story, but this is based on an article that Bergman read about mobster Vincent Teresa, who was arrested for smuggling a near extinct lizard in the United States. That's where he got this idea from. So, I mean,
so that's why the focus is on the Komodo.
I guess. I mean, you just started off the whole movie with it, so I don't mind that. I don't mind that. That's kind of the final set piece. I just wish that they wrapped in those other subplots.
Yeah.
Or at least one subplot and gave it like the father-son dynamic and or made the stepfather more of a character.
I think the father-son dynamic between Carmine and Clark is the biggest missing piece to this film. Mm-hmm. Plot-wise and development-wise and thematically. Because I think that's the theme of the film. That's clearly what they set up as the theme, but I don't think that they follow through with that.
Mm-hmm. So the scene when Clark first meets Carmine and he cracks those walnuts. Did you know that story? That Broderick didn't know that he was going to break those walnuts in his hand during that scene. And he didn't know. Yep. He didn't know that Brando pre-cracked those walnuts. He pre-cracked the shells. So when he did it, Broderick thought that he was really squeezing walnuts. Yeah. I thought that was good.
It's the Godfather. I would think that too. I'd be like, oh my God, this is Marlon Brando.
Brando also wore an earpiece in this film, so an assistant could feed him lines.
Oh yeah, this is post really giving a shit about memorizing anything. Well,
it might not be that. He might have memory problems. He might not have been able to.
It's the same thing with the Godfather. They had to feed him lines on a whiteboard, or like Duvall had to wear the giant poster board with his lines on it.
But that's a great story, though.
Apocalypse Now, they had to hide his body because he was supposed to have a big fight scene, but he's too gigantic and fat.
But that scene looks good.
I think the original ending to Apocalypse Now is stupid. A big mountain fight where they're tumbling down the mountain, like wouldn't fit the rest of what Apocalypse Now was. So good on Brando for getting fat and crazy. But this was about the time when he was, because when was The Island of Dr. Moreau?
97.
5 years after that?
Yeah. In the 90s. It was because it was after like Val Kilmer kind of blew up a little bit. So I want to say, yeah. I don't know if 97 is accurate.
That's about when it all went.
Well, that was Brando. That was a doomed shoot for a lot of
all the stuff about like Brando kind of going nuts and
96. Yeah.
96. Yeah.
So shot in 95. So yeah.
But I mean, I know that there are other actors who need to be fed lines and stuff as well.
Ooh, who?
Well, Bruce Willis for one now because of his
that's not fit.
condition.
But that's a little.
I can't off the top of my head. I can't think of anybody else. But I know there are a couple of other actors who have a lot of problems with like lines.
I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I thought you had them.
No, I did not.
My bad.
But I do know that there are a couple.
Did you know that Brando claimed this film would be the biggest turkey of all time?
Then why do
that? You didn't read that? Oh, so he condemned the film, and that's because the shoot went over a week, and he asked for $1 million more, and the producer says no, and he threatened to badmouth the movie, so they called his bluff. They followed through, and he followed through with the threat. So the next day that he said that, they paid him, and then he started praising the film.
Ridiculous. $1 million for one extra week of work.
Marlon Brando. He's putting butts in the seats.
It's true.
I mean,
but you also have Broderick at that point, like right off of Ferris Bueller.
Well, Ferris Bueller, you keep saying that, but Ferris Bueller was 86. So that's
was it? I thought Ferris Bueller was 89.
No,
you're probably right. I don't know Ferris Bueller.
86.
Okay.
Yeah. And then like I think this was either before or after Biloxi Blues, which he did. But like you're having an issue with him. Maybe the same people were having an issue with him too back then. Glory's 89. So, he
did Glory and then he did this movie.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Why?
He goes from like general or colonel in a in a brigade to being a college freshman.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just like his age range is just like, go play a college student again, got college freshman again. He just played the colonel of an entire battalion of men. No. Yeah, you're gonna play a freshman in college this time.
Well, he can
start show off in the summer right after high school.
So just to give you an idea, so from Ferris Bueller's Day Off to Project X, to She's Having a Baby. Oh, never mind. That's a joke one. To Biloxi Blues, to Torch Song Trilogy, Family Business. I don't know if you remember that one. Gloria, then The Freshman. So, I mean, you're about 6 years away from The Cable Guy, and The Cable Guy. Do you like him in that? I mean, The Cable Guy is funny.
I'm not a huge Cable Guy. I have to watch it again because I only watched it when I was younger. So obviously watching like Ace Ventura and then The Mask and then watching The Cable Guy, it was like night and day difference. So I really have to rewatch The Cable Guy. It's something I've been meaning to do. There's
no utensils in medieval times, but there's Pepsi. That's my favorite line. Oh, all right. Anyways. Did you see the note that they met John Gotti one night while working?
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought my favorite part of the note is that someone made an awkward joke and they're just like, okay, let's leave. We're going to get shot. Also, the other thing, and I mean, we'll get to it in terms of why we think it's forgotten, but something to consider too, is that this summer, so I said the 27th, and I gave you the movies that came out, like Arachnophobia was the 20th of July, but I usually don't go back further, but I want to because there's two huge films that came out that July, Ghost, the 13th, and Die Hard 2 on July 6th. So, yeah. So I think those films probably carried over throughout the whole month of July.
I would imagine.
Yeah.
And their big summer, a big summer action film is going to beat a comedy film in the summer, at least. I mean, more times than not.
Die Hard 2 must have been busy all the time in the theaters back then. All the time.
Right.
Just because Die Hard is so huge and then Die Hard 2 comes out. I mean, and Die Hard 2 kind of has action. It's not like it, I know it's not as good, but it's decent enough where it'll people are still going to go see it. So.
Oh, they're going to see it just because it's got the name Die Hard on it. It doesn't matter that it's, I know a lot of people have warmed up to it now, but I know it wasn't very much liked very well back then.
Mm-hmm.
It was the bad one of the Die Hards, but
Die Hard 2?
Yeah, for a while. I mean, now people like it, but back then it was kind of like everyone kind of like, it's the Temple of Doom of the Die Hards.
They should have stopped at 3, but yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. But I mean, back then, hey, you want to go see the sequel to Die Hard? There's a sequel to Die Hard? Mm-hmm. It's like, of course you're going to see it. And Bruce Willis back then. You're watching that movie.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Do you want to see Die Hard 2 again, or do you want to watch Matthew Broderick college comedy?
I kind of like this film still, but I understand what you're saying. I'm not going to argue your.
I'm just saying in terms of audiences and what they'd like, what you're saying with the competition. That's some stiff competition. Like, I don't think the summer release date is a good
for this
date for it. Yeah. I think it's very tough to have a comedy that really works in the summertime. Like, I know you want to do counter programming, but I just don't think, like, Beverly Hills Cop is a great comedy because it's also got action. Like, you need something like that, or just have some really, really big comedy stars in your comedy movie to really blow it up.
But you also had it also went up against Presumed Innocent, which is a big film, and it's Harrison Ford. And he's, he's still a bankable star, but he's,
right.
super hot back then. So, he's
that's your one Ford movie a summer kind of movie.
Yeah. This is before he started migrating into the August, because August used to be his month. Clear and Present Danger, even 6 Days, 7 Nights, I think was early August. Air Force One.
Right.
So I'm trying to think. Give me something that in this film you really enjoyed besides Brando. There's nothing else in this movie you liked. No jokes hit for you.
I'll tell you what, I hated that they didn't know where he was from. Like
Okay.
I hated it. I was like, oh, Montana. Oh, this, that,
Kansas.
Connecticut. But at the end was Montana when they announce it during the party.
Mhm.
Straight from Montana. For some reason, like they do, like it's the same thing where like you tell a joke so many times it becomes funny again. I was like, I didn't laugh. And then the last time when even the announcer says he's from Montana, I went, ah. So I thought that was funny. I do like chasing the monitor lizard through the mall. I was
Mhm.
like, this is bonkers and totally not what I was like. This not this what this movie is, but I enjoyed that. I enjoyed all the people just running for their lives with the Komodo Dragon, quote unquote, running through the mall. It also made me go, oh man, remember malls? Like people used to go to them, and it was like an entire day's experience.
Yep.
Those days are gone.
Yeah.
But I like that scene.
And they use different Asian water monitors for different scenes. You know, one that was calm, that was not sedated, but just was an older, calmer creature. One that could run. That's the one they were chasing. So, you know, in this modern day of everything CGI, I kind of appreciate that those were real creatures running around.
It was like gutsy of the actors to be like, obviously you can't hold a Komodo dragon, but even a monitor lizard, I'd be like, those are some big nails on that sucker.
Yeah, they're fine.
Seatbelt them up. I'm paying you $2 million.
Suck it up. Yeah, you're in a big movie, a big summer film. Do it.
I also really like Bruno Kirby in this movie. I think he does a really good job. I enjoyed his scenes. I didn't think he was like super funny, but I thought he played his role well. And I did enjoy the scenes he was in.
Bruno Kirby I love him in City Slickers. I love him in Good Morning Vietnam, When Harry Met Sally. But he's like, you talk about Broderick. He's pretty much Bruno Kirby in everything.
Oh yeah.
Probably with the exception of Good Morning Vietnam, because with Good Morning Vietnam, he's like somebody who like he thinks he's cool, but he's not. He really is getting made fun of, and he turns into like, you know, not the villain, but he turns into like his not nemesis, but I guess nemesis for the lack of a better term.
Sure.
Thorn in his side or whatever, in Robin Williams' character's side. You know, he's pretty much Bruno Kirby in everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I like him in all the movies I just said and everything he's been in. I've never had a problem with Bruno Kirby. Do you think that do you think that this is one of his better roles or just kind of?
I think this movie fits him very well.
Yeah.
And I'm saying I don't like, he's good in Good Morning Vietnam as well.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, he was definitely a bright spot in this movie that I was like, this works. This works because he's the perfect, like, that kind of like, he's not that kind of embarrassment to the mob family, but he's definitely kind of the one who's like, you go to like, I can't remember what he says. He swears or something in front of Carmine at one point. He's like, why do you got to go there? Like he's just that family member that you're just like, all right, you can depend on him, but also, come on, man. So I think that worked really well for him. And I do enjoy, like when he, you want to help me? You got me. You caught me. You want to help me up with stuff? And they're like hanging his clothes as they're talking. I really liked that scene.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it really worked well. But yeah, you're right. He is always pretty much the same guy.
You didn't like, I love the name of Fleaber's treaty, the treaties that he said. You have to read Fleaber's treaties, guns and provolone. I like that.
Oh.
Did you catch that? Did you catch, one of the two things I didn't understand. I didn't like the voiceover, but I never like voiceover. So
right.
There you go.
I figured you wouldn't like that.
Yeah. I just don't, I'm not a fan. The scene where he first meets his roommate and he's holding the viewfinder.
Oh yeah.
All I kept thinking was 4:3. This viewfinder's 4:3. This viewfinder's TV. It's not 16:9. It's not cinema. It's not one. I mean, like what the heck is this?
What I figured, like, and it totally isn't what the character gets, like Frank Whaley, which I also really like Frank Whaley in this. I like Frank Whaley in general. His name was Steve Buscek is his name. Like when he appears, he comes off as like, this guy's going to be insufferable. Like I figured, like I didn't mind like what he was using. So I just figured like, oh, my roommate's coming. Let me pull this off my desk real quick and put it in his face. He's going to love that. So it's like, but then again, the character is just, that's not the character we get after that scene.
I think he's also, you'd think that an NYU film student would just be recording everything or want to record everything or want to think about stuff cinematically. But I think he's in NYU because they can just do the Fleabr stuff and make a comment on that and move on. So other than, because you've already kind of talked about the release date being an issue, you don't think it's a summer film. And I'm going to say, besides that, you're going to say people don't like Matthew Broderick. Why do you think that this movie didn't do well in the box office?
I don't think people don't like Matthew Broderick. I don't know. I'm still ruminating on that. I think that obviously been a long time since Marlon Brando passed. I think that people don't know that he played his character again in The Freshman. I think that this movie is maybe very much an early 90s film or late 80s, I know it came in 1990, but it's very much a late 80s, early 90s film.
Well, it's got that rap montage in the beginning. So yeah, that's usually
the cleaned up NWA.
Is it? Oh, that's right.
Yeah. But yeah, it's very much like, hey, let's go into the city.
Pretty much.
Hey, look at this. Look at these black guys like about to rob these white guys coming out.
Oh,
it's the rich against the poor.
Yeah.
Which also, again, never comes up again. Well, that's another thing I hate in the movie. They're in Grand Central. Where's the subway? It's all over the walls.
Yeah, there's plenty of signs, dude.
Come on. Even back then, it's literally built into the building.
Yeah.
So I thought that was really stupid. Obviously, anybody who's never been to New York City or Grand Central doesn't know that. But it's just like, come on.
Well, he had to have visited NYU on a trip to see if he wanted to go there.
That's also true. Yeah, that's also true. That's a 2-mile walk.
Yeah.
But I don't even remember your question anymore.
Why do we think it's forgotten?
Well, it's like, it's very much set in the early 90s. And I think we talk about how some movies can be timeless. I think it's tough to make a timeless movie when you place it in a city like New York that has changed so much in that much time, or when you rely a lot on older cars, older styles. Like this movie just kind of screams early 90s, late 80s. And I think that doesn't help it. And I think that it just doesn't have any, other than Broderick, who's, I'm not going to say his star has, he hasn't really been in a lot of stuff recently. I don't know if his star hasn't faded, but he just hasn't been in a lot recently and to be in the public's eye.
Mr. Broderick, if you're listening to this podcast, that is Mike Butler disparaging you, not me.
Mr. Broderick, I think you're great in Glory. But I think that I just don't think that there's enough star power in it now that keeps it in the public eye. And again, cable's dead. This used to be on cable all the time when I was younger. And it's not
HBO
anymore.
Max.
It is on HBO Max, but
or
when
whenever you listen to this now, Warner Brothers Discovery or Warner Brothers Universal Discovery, whatever it is now.
When you type in The Freshman, the first two things you get, it's like, it was even after I typed The Freshman, it was like the fourth thing on my list on HBO Max. The first two being The Fresh Prince, even though I clearly typed in The Freshman. So even HBO Max is like, you're not really looking for this movie, right?
You sure?
Yeah. I think that hurts. I think the fact that it's not entirely quotable. It's not, I don't know, to me at least, maybe you have a different opinion. It's not laugh out loud funny.
There's moments I laughed. I mean, it's not, am I going to say it's not funny enough to stand the test of time. You know,
sure.
It's, if you're, I think it's really cool to see Don Corleone again, basically, but more comedic. So I think the pull is Brando. I don't think the pull is Broderick. And just some of this, and Bruno Kirby's really good in it. I just think that it's not like, there's obviously funnier comedies that were back then. Mm-hmm. But I'm curious, you said something that I wanted to ask this question. So you don't think that this movie, the New York City in this film is indicative of New York City in the 90s? Is that what you're saying?
No, I think it is indicative of New York City.
Okay. Okay.
But I think that doesn't make it timeless.
Well, what's funny is that you had this movie that came out.
You're going to say the other movies that are New York back then.
I'm going to say New Jack City, because New Jack City was early 90s and it dealt with something very specific that was happening within the city, which was the crack epidemic. But it's relatively like within the same time frame as this film. So I'm not saying anything. I'm just saying it's fascinating that there's two films around the same time and it's two different types of cities.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Well, that's the thing about New York. You can make it so many different kinds of New York, depending on what you want to focus on. But I think you talked about it with New Jack. That's one of the reasons New Jack gets forgotten, because it is so set within its time period.
Well, it's definitely a movie of that time. Yeah. And it can't be remade because it won't have the same powerful impact as it did back then. Right.
What's interesting about New Jack is they make New York City like this fairy tale version of it, kind of. It's a heightened version of it, which I think helps that. And I don't think that it's set in the early 90s and totally looks like early 90s New York hurts the film. But I think it keeps people, like we've talked about before, it keeps people from like those images, that imagery in your head would want to keep you from, it's old. It's old. I don't want to watch it. I'm of course talking about younger people.
Younger than you?
Younger than me, yeah. People like my age and older, like your age and stuff like that, and older, we're going to look at it and kind of have like a reverence for it. So it reminds us of a time that, we experienced long ago. But anybody younger than that, it's going to be like, you're old. I'm not watching this. Why are those cars so boxy and square?
But I like watching films back then, though. We just had a conversation about these movies that I'm watching that were from the 80s. So
but that's the thing. It's like you watch it with a little bit of reverence that I don't think the younger generation would.
I just want to watch, because I want to watch films that came before the film. Because the further you get away from those years and those decades, the more that the era of films kind of come into focus in terms of what was being put on screen and why, and what people were trying to say, and maybe we missed it the first time. This is not one of those films. This is just a fun movie. Like, this is meant to be a fun movie. Let's put it that way. It's not a movie that's meant to have. It's not a snapshot of the time. It's just it's just meant to be a fun film, but I think you have to be attuned to that comedy. I think it's, is The Freshman the first thing I'm going to grab when I want to have a movie night and people want to be like, I want to watch a Matthew Broderick film or Marlon Brando. It's like, no, it's not. But I definitely think, I definitely would think that people should go back and watch it. I definitely think people should check it out. It's short enough. I think it's a nice Saturday night film. I don't think I think they'd get some laughs. Maybe if they were, if they didn't like Matthew Broderick, like you don't. I'm not beating a dead horse, but I think it's worthy enough or good enough to suggest for somebody to watch.
It's okay if you like The Godfather. It's like, do you want to see him in a comedy movie? He's basically the exact same character. He's the exact same actor.
Yeah,
I think that novelty alone is worth the watch.
Sure,
for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think Matthew Broderick is bad. I think it's just, it hurts the film a little bit that his character is just all over the place. Maybe that's what I'm getting at. Because again, it's like I'm still ruminating. I'm still germinating this thing. But I totally didn't even think about Glory when I was thinking about this. But I think it more boils down to this character is all over the place. And I think that, first and foremost, is the thing that hurts this film for me.
So before we leave it, because I know I meant to bring this note up earlier when we were talking about Broderick and all that stuff, but I forgot. But Bergman talked about how Broderick was very hot at the time and he was impossible to get. He was like the hottest thing going. So he was extremely popular in terms of putting in stuff. So he clearly was bankable to some degree.
I was going to say, this has got to be this is the time of Broderick.
And he only agreed to do it because Brando did it. And Bergman's comment is that once Brando was in the picture, he could get any actor he wanted. Even Olivier wanted to be in the film, but he was too sick, so he couldn't be in it. So it's like, who would
Olivier have been? Like the bartender?
He would have been. This says instead of Max Schell, which I'm assuming isn't that the bartender?
That's the bartender. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like a really small role,
a little cameo.
Yeah.
Okay,
but that would have been all right. I would have been like, hey, but
yeah,
it wasn't meant to be. So
that also explains why they had like 8 other actors in line to be Broderick's character.
Oh,
so
I'm
like,
sure.
He's going to say no. All right. Who else do we get? Everybody who's young back then.
Oh, I'm sure. All right, Mike, where can they find us?
You can find us at ForgottenCinemaPodcast.com or ForgottenEntertainment.com as we are part of the Forgotten Entertainment family. While you're there, check out all the other great podcasts and videos we have for you. They're pretty good. Check them out. And wherever you're listening to us, why don't you go ahead, give us a review, drop a like, subscribe. All the good stuff helps our podcast grow. And check us out on the lobby on Facebook where we can talk about the movies. Tell me how wrong I am. I'm sure that's what's going to happen. I feel right.
Not usually.
It's great. It's great.
Join us next week. We jump in 10 years, 11 years to 2001. We're going to be talking about the Tailor of Panama. So you had not seen this film, right?
I had not. And this is a film that you couldn't figure out what film it was for the longest time.
I mistook it for Palmetto. So
no, you mistook it for Palmetto and After the Sunset.
Right. But this is so. But I was half right because Pierce Brosnan's in both After the Sunset and the Tailor of Panama. So we are good
This
now.
is true.
So that is next week. Until then, everyone have a great week. I'm Mike Field.
I'm Mike Butler.
And this has been Forgotten Cinema.